Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is the fall 2006 opener of City Talk. The primaries are over. The general election is in 8 weeks. So you've got Spitzer versus Faso, Clinton versus Spencer, Cuomo versus Pirro, and Hevesi versus... I don't remember. To talk about the primary results and to look forward to the November elections and beyond are Fran Reiter, partner in Reiter Begun Associates and former deputy mayor under Rudy Giuliani. Fran ran the mayor's re-election campaign in 1997, and she teaches with me at Baruch. And Bill Cunningham, managing director at Dan Cloris Communications. Bill served as Mayor Bloomberg's communications director, which means he's the political guy. Bill is also the former head of the New York State Democratic Party and a noted bon vivant and raconteur. Fran, Bill, is the Republican Party dead, or is it just merely comatose?
I think it's comatose. I don't think you can ever count a major party out and call it dead, but it's certainly comatose. And I just want to say thank you very much in your opening for giving us the roster of candidates that are going to be running, because I kept thinking last night before going to bed, I'm going to embarrass myself tomorrow because I can't remember most of these people's names. And that's... so thank you.
There was a little bit of, are they going to be awake tomorrow?
Right.
Bill, I mean, talk about the state of the Republican Party or the state of the Democratic Party.
Last night I heard former Senator D'Amato say the Republican Party's dead. Former Mayor Koch said they're done. And these things run in cycles.
Right.
Sure.
And you know, there's been 12 years of Pataki government in Albany, and people are just ready for a change. And I think that the Democratic field found out that when everybody coalesced behind Spitzer early, it was, this is the change we want. Don't bother us with any more details.
Right, right. And that was the problem with the Swazi campaign. Tom was a legitimate gubernatorial candidate. He had a substantial record, substantial message, nothing.
Yeah, you know,
he was presumed to be the governor. He was treated as the governor-elect Spitzer from the very beginning.
Right.
They fostered that attitude. He got the institutional support. He got the money. No contest.
To me, though, the final nail of the Swazi candidacy came right at the beginning, which is, while he certainly communicated a rationale for why he was running, his major support right off the bat, Ken Langone. I mean, here you have a guy who, rightly or wrongly, was looking like the symbol of all of this Wall Street excess, right, with the whole pay scandal and investigation into this New York Stock Exchange. And here you've got the reformer whose greatest supporter, who's going all over the place, maybe with Swazi's permission, maybe without, saying, I'm going to raise millions of dollars for this guy's candidacy because I hate Eliot Spitzer. And he is the personification of exactly why people love Eliot Spitzer, which is he went off after the Wall Street big shots. So, to me, this was bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Yeah.
What does he stay? As long as he did. I mean, it was, you knew in June, you knew in May.
Look.
What motivates them?
You could say the same about almost anybody who lost yesterday.
Right.
They knew in June.
Okay, that's true.
But with the exception, maybe, that it wasn't clear till August for Mark Green.
Right.
But they all knew the way it was stacking up. This was a year when the Democratic Party voters, such as they were, who came out yesterday, it wasn't the lowest ever, I don't think, but it was low. But these are the hardcore voters of the Democratic Party. And if Mark Green can't get traction in a low turnout primary where the core vote's going to be Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn, then it's all over.
Right. Have we seen the end of Mark? Go ahead.
Well, he says you have. Well, at least as a candidate. I'm sure he'll still
I'm sure
pop
he'll
up
be a vocal public figure.
But Swazi at least ran the last month or so of his campaign with some grace, some humor.
He did very well in the pace debate.
he did well in the debates. I think he got credit from the editorial boards for being a legitimate candidate with real issues. And some people will say, well, he's done. But you're not done.
Nah.
Andrew Cuomo came back.
Is
he's
the
poster
prime
boy for that.
example, right?
A long time ago, I was talking to sort of my colleague on the Republican side, of the Republican Party at the time, and he was ruining the fact that Democrats will run somebody, they'll lose, they'll come back and run again. They'll learn something from a loss and they'll use it. And Republicans run, lose, and go away. And that's really how you do develop. And Andrew Cuomo adapted and developed. Hugh Carey lost an election for city council president, became governor. Pat Moynihan lost for city council president. Bob Abrams. Mario Cuomo lost for mayor, became governor.
Right.
You know,
there are second acts, but is there a fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh act?
Well, it gets tiring.
Only if Mark all of a sudden has an epiphany, which I think he's had before, and says, this is the office that was made for me. In essence, that's what he did with this race. He decided, there was no other message that I think was really resonating out there. He went out there and said, I am the Attorney General, and then stopped selling himself. He just simply said, this is mine. Anybody who spoke to Mark heard that line from the earliest moments of his candidacy. And it never really changed. And then he just sort of went on the attack. There was no great rationale that was communicated because he assumed everybody believed as he did that he was put on earth to be Attorney General. And
very benign view of.
That's what he said to everyone. I mean, this is from Mark's mouth. I spoke to Mark very, very early on, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "This job has always been mine. This is the job for me. I am the ultimate advocate. I am." And you sort of listen to it, and he had this race won already, as he has believed he has had races won in every race that he's entered.
Yeah.
You ran a campaign.
Look, Mark Green had a used playbook in this campaign. Unfortunately, it was the one Andrew Cuomo threw away from the governor's race 4 years ago. Mark attacked the party leadership, the state committee structure, the workers of the Democratic Party, the very people who supported him for mayor. He was attacking, and as I recall, that was sort of what Andrew did 4 years ago and got so much heat for.
Right.
And so Mark, when he senses that the odds are against him, he's starting to slip away. I think there's a track record. He did it to Freddie Ferrer to hold on. He did it to Mike Bloomberg at the end of that campaign, and he did it to Andrew Cuomo in this campaign, and the public is just tired of that campaign.
Okay, let's move forward. You've got now Cuomo and Pirro. That looks to be the only thing that doesn't put you to sleep. That's not in the Slate sleep aid section at Duane Reade.
I think that's right.
There could be a race for the state Senate somewhere.
Nice, very nice. Thank you, Bill.
I mean, my view is this was the election that appears to have gotten rid of Ada Smith. So, that may be the biggest story.
Well, this is a plus.
This may be the biggest story of the campaign.
Who has hot coffee?
Nice. It's only an allegation. No, it's not. It's
Although there was an interesting race, the congressional race
in the
11th for Major Owen's seat certainly was an interesting race to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, particularly the racial dynamic. It wasn't that there was the subtext, it was the text, even though there were issue fault lines like Atlantic Yards.
But I will say the Cuomo-Pirro race is certainly, I agree, is certainly the race to watch at this point. And while I think the polls are showing Jeanine Pirro to certainly be at a deficit at this point, and it's not an insubstantial one, it's very early. She's sort of been laying back while the Democrats fought, while Mark and Andrew fought their race. I think she's going to be she is potentially a substantial candidate, and she's a woman. She certainly has the credentials.
She's Catholic. She's not New York City.
She's not New York City. She has obvious liabilities. So does Andrew.
Right.
So
well,
I think part of it's going to be is how skillful will she be, and will her campaign be during the course of this campaign. If they're skillful and if they can build her up in the right way and at the same time take him down, I think there's a potential that this is going to be a horse race.
And a mud fest.
Could be.
It could be.
Could be.
It doesn't have to be.
Right.
And whoever begins it will probably damage themselves initially. The question is, do you do more damage than you suffer?
Sure.
It also depends what the mud is.
It depends,
Right, yeah, but personal lives.
No, I think I don't think either one of them will want to get into the other person's
because
personal life.
it's
and
nuclear.
I got to tell you, I was somewhat surprised that the only place I saw someone's personal life brought up was in the Daily News editorial, where they endorsed Green, and they brought up Andrew Cuomo's marriage. I didn't see that brought up anywhere else
No,
in the
neither did
campaign.
I. Right.
I was shocked by that for an editorial.
Okay, let's move to the Clinton-Spencer race. I mean, the Spencer-McFarlane primary was psychodrama. It provided some of the most bizarre moments of this campaign.
Hey, she got 40% of the vote.
I know, but the rationale, who was she?
Who would have thought that the Republican Party is really filled with Jerry Springer guests?
Right, exactly. I mean, what's going on?
He
Right,
did what
exactly.
to who, and she said what about her father?
Right.
And it was public and it was ugly.
Right.
What happens now? Spencer's got $4 million in the bank. Clinton's got 22. She's got a big lead in the polls. Organization, Democratic state. Did the national Republicans get involved in this, or is this money down the dark hole? They're not going to try to injure her. They'll put the money in New Jersey.
Some group, some 527 or one of those groups will come to try and damage her or do something. But look, 6 years ago when she ran very strongly in upstate New York, running dead even in rural counties, which are Republican counties. And that tells me that she has a base among women voters, no matter what party they're in. She appeals on issues, and she appeals, I think, as a symbol.
She's also, Billy, she's a Midwesterner. She knew how to talk to people upstate. She understood their mindset. She understood the economic problems upstate, and she was able to communicate with them. So that even beyond that base, I think she won over voters 6 years ago who may have had real question marks about her when she started. But this is a woman who's able to be both the urban politician, the suburban politician, and the rural politician, and that's a real rarity.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with a single thing. She did very well 6 years ago upstate, and she's going to do better upstate this time.
Yep.
And the Republicans know it, and the real problem that the Republican Party now has is they have a very weak ticket. They have a very strong race for governor at the top of the Democratic ticket, a very strong Senate candidate, and almost, I assume, Alan Hevesy has no opponent to speak of. We can't
remember his name.
Right, but there is somebody.
There is somebody.
It's a him.
And in the mix, the weakest, the closest race is going to be AG, which is sandwiched in between all of these powerhouses.
Right. Absolutely.
So what's going to happen are Republican voters, sensing this tidal wave, are going to stay home.
Right.
Stay home.
And that's how. They don't switch. They don't cross over and vote, but they stay home.
And look, and the big national Republican money isn't going to go here. It's going to wait and see after Hillary wins re-election, what she does about the presidency, and that's when they're going to spend their money, not here.
Protect their Senate and House seats, and they're also going to put money into the Menendez-Kane race, where they've got a shot to take a state. But the Democratic Party is controlling all the statewide offices potentially. The odds of controlling the state Senate are not good in this cycle, but it's possible, given if Republicans stay home and Democrats come out. You could have every official statewide and every institution under the control of the Democrats. Is that good for the Democrats, and is it good for the people?
Well, I don't
that's
think
two different questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think the Senate's going to change hands.
No, I don't either.
Because they've cut the districts to fit their prime voters in upstate New York.
As the Assembly did.
And the Assembly did the same. And so I think institutionally that will remain. It may tighten up a little bit more. I think with David Paterson leaving to run for lieutenant governor, that might have hurt the Democrats a little bit with fundraising, and it took the focus off the state Senate. But, the strongest card Pirro has to play is the old, put me there to watch over the rest of these guys.
He becomes the next Louis Lefkowitz.
Normally that's either Louis Lefkowitz or it's Arthur Levitt, the Democrat, versus the Rockefeller era. But, you know, that's a rationale that flies in the face of her credentials, which are I'm an active prosecutor, active lawyer, active. Now, if the Attorney General's job, as near as I can tell, having worked in state government, is to be basically the contracts lawyer for the state of New York and defend it in civil litigation. And then there's a consumer element, and then there's, you know, what you can do to protect people. There was a very minor criminal.
Well, that's
Right.
true. I think what she's gonna do is position herself as, I know how to run a legal office, that the best attorneys general that we've had have been very, very good lawyers, and I think there's actually truth to that, and that this is a question not only of running an agency, it's not a question of criminal trials, it's a question of knowing how to use the law, and particularly in the post-Spitzer era, how to use the law for the benefit of the people of New York, and the only people who know how to do that are the people who are actively engaged in the law. I think that's where she ends up going, because Eliot Spitzer has changed the Attorney General's office. He went into all kinds of areas that normally were the province of other government entities, like the SEC, as the prime example.
Or the Manhattan DA.
Or the Manhattan DA.
That's right, or the Manhattan DA.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
there's a certain expectation, I think, now. This is an office that most people don't really understand, didn't understand, probably think that they're like a district attorney, at least many of them did. But the truth is, Eliot Spitzer's tenure as Attorney General has changed the face of this office. He was so high profile and went into, again, non-traditional areas, that public expectation may very well have changed about this office, to the extent that people are paying attention to it at all, which is always sort of a question mark. So it will be interesting to see how each positions himself, because the rap against Andrew in the primary from a number of his opponents is that he's not a practicing lawyer, he doesn't really know how to do this, and that, it seems to me, is going to continue to be a theme of his opponent.
Okay, talk about John Faso. I mean, does he went into the Eliot Spitzer, the Tom Suozzi problem? Overwhelming amount of money for Spitzer. Spitzer's perceived to be the governor-elect. Spitzer's got the organization. He comes out of this primary with tremendous bounce. Is any money going to go to Faso? Can Faso really get the message out? Whatever the message is.
He'll get some money. Look, John Faso is he's a nice guy. He's an intelligent guy. I've seen him on your
Thoughtful
show.
guy, yeah.
I thought he did very well
Excellent.
on here in the panel you had with him and your colleague here from CUNY TV. And he could create a very civil, high-toned debate.
Yeah.
That's not going to beat Eliot Spitzer.
Right.
But it'll be nice to show people that it's possible in American politics.
Yeah, you could have. I mean, I agree with your characterization of John, and certainly Eliot's capable of it. We may have that intelligent dialogue, particularly if Spitzer's that far ahead, he may be willing to take the risk to have the dialogue.
Well, I think it'll be
I wouldn't go.
long-distance dialogue.
I'm not sure I would go that far.
It'll be long distance. It won't be standing next to each other in debates in every town square.
No, it would be strategically foolish for Spitzer to do that.
You know, when you Kerry ran for governor, and when he ran for re-election, he debated about a dozen times in each election. You'll never see that.
Never again.
No.
Ever
Too much
again.
exposure.
He liked it, and when he was behind, he knew he needed it. And so he was willing to debate his opponents. And you just won't see it anymore.
You earlier off camera said you've...
By the way, there's probably more ulcers created per debate than anything else.
Come on, I've been there.
For a staff candidate.
Oh, it's the worst.
How long can you hold your breath?
Oh, man. And the preparation takes...
The two worst things in politics are waiting on election day and waiting for a debate to end.
To end. Right.
Those minutes go by. It's like I don't know what to describe it as.
No, I know.
It's just torture.
I know. I've been there. It's crazy. And the New York Times editorial board interview has elements of that fear factor as well, but not like
it does, but it's not public.
No, see,
it is.
You can really screw this up.
That's right.
Publicly.
You
can
be in absolute perfect shape and say the one wrong thing during a debate, and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Off camera, Bill, you said you're the only person in the world who's both briefed Mike Bloomberg and Howard Stern on how to do. What was? Pat Moynihan and Howard Stern.
Put Bloomberg Bloomberg in there too.
Right,
but-
and a press conference. Talk about how you would approach any one of the major campaigns on the underdog side, other than Janine. Let's look at Spitzer Faso and Clinton Spencer.
Well, Elliott has announced that he's running to change Albany, and I think that if you're running Faso's campaign, since Albany's the issue, and you've been a long-term assemblyman, you have to talk about what you know about the system and how you can use that to change it, and why your skill set would be better than Attorney General Spitzer's as governor. And it's a really steep mountain to climb.
Yeah.
Attitudes are being set.
Particularly because you've been on the inside.
Right, exactly.
Right.
But he's also run. He's been a good party soldier, and he's also taken on the party as he did this year when they wanted to go with somebody else.
Sure.
So he has some cards to play, and he is articulate. He can craft a conservative message that at least brings the Republican base back, so that it's not a total disaster for them. And in doing that, he might help them maintain their Senate seats.
Okay, excellent. Let's talk about that 11th congressional district, the district that pitted Yvette Clarke, Chris Owens, Carl Andrews, and David Yaskey, with Yvette winning by 5%, a couple of thousand votes. Interesting election because of the symbolism. What did the election mean?
Okay, you go first.
What did it mean? Well,
you need to define what you mean by mean.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I take out of this, and I keep taking out of the same notion from the last few elections, is that racial politics in New York has changed. That's number one. That depending on race in and of itself is simply not enough anymore. We saw that with Charlie King's campaign, where major blacks, here you have the one, until David, and this started early, until David Patterson became the lieutenant governor candidate, Charlie King was the only African-American who was running, the only person of color who was running for statewide office. There was this assumption that there would be this great coalescing of African-American support for him among leaders. There wasn't. It never happened. And you know, it's changed. Yvette Clarke has won in a four-way race. There certainly was a degree of polarization with Yaskey coming in. I think part of that is also the fact that he moved into the district to do it. Had he already lived there, it would have been difficult to say he shouldn't run. But it seems to me that while that was sort of brewing early on, it died down after a while. And then you had Anthony Weiner, white, Jewish, very popular in Brooklyn. He comes out and endorses Yvette. I guess what I'm saying is that there are no assumptions that you can make anymore about how people are going to behave.
In terms of their demographics, that's
correct.
But politicians will always behave in their best interest.
That's right.
Anthony Weiner's best interest was being associated with a popular black elected official.
Particularly if he's running for mayor in 2009.
Win or lose, Anthony would get something out of it.
Exactly.
No, that's exactly right. And the black politicians who coalesced around Andrew Cuomo after dithering around. Al Sharpton never really made an endorsement of the race. He played games with every different, with 2 or 3 campaigns. All I'm saying is that, I mean, Bill's absolutely right. It is politics, but it's no longer, in my view, black politics. It's politics, more and more so.
And talk about not only this.
There was another factor in that race.
Go ahead.
1199.
Right, and 32 BJ.
Right. 32 BJ. Put their operations to work.
Yeah.
And everything indicated a 26, 24, 22 race.
Right.
And then it turns into a 31, 26 or whatever.
Right. With Yaskey vastly outspending.
What's the difference? Well, the only
tangible
difference in the last 5 days was the announcement that the political operation of these unions was going to work for Yvette.
Right. What do we teach our students?
Right.
The new political parties are the unions, the municipal unions particularly.
But you say, is there a de-emphasis on racial and ethnic politics? I mean, you in the 2005 mayoral campaign, clearly demonstrated, even in 2001, that those fault lines had broken down. I mean, Mike Bloomberg did rather well among
Yep.
Hispanic voters
Yep.
against a Puerto Rican
Well,
candidate. And he had done well in the previous election against Mark
Look,
Lane.
in 2001, we got half of the Hispanic vote and a quarter of the black vote.
Right.
We got the reverse of that running against Freddie in 2005. And holding 25% of the Hispanic vote against the Hispanic candidate with
Extraordinary.
his
Sure.
knowledge and his ID was an extraordinary.
Extraordinary.
But that was based on a record that people could relate to and say, look, we like what you're doing. Keep it up. But there's underlying all of this, there's a demographic that is changing New York politics. Home ownership. I talked to you about this, I think,
Sure.
the first time I was on your show.
Sure.
In the same way that home ownership and stock ownership changed British politics and made Margaret Thatcher, a conservative, the darling of the working class, which normally
Right.
would be the Labour Party, a southeastern Queens, Caribbean American homeowner, middle class voter
right.
will vote the same way as a firefighter who lives in Bay Area.
That's exactly
who's Irish
right.
Catholic.
Class rather than race and ethnicity.
You
to
vote
a
your
certain
interest.
extent. Right.
Just
Vote
like
your
Anthony
interest.
Weiner does.
That's
It's just-
right.
Okay.
You're going to vote crime,
That's right.
schools, taxes if you're a homeowner.
Right. Right.
It's your home values, those three things.
And you've
We
got
have a minute. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, you've got a Latino community that's very diverse, but the Puerto
Right.
Rican community has been here for decades and is in and of itself economically diverse. So that's changed. This notion that the notion that ethnic or racial groups are poor, are downtrodden. There are huge middle classes among these groups
and
as
there
well.
are differences within
That's-
those groups.
That's right.
I mean, the Caribbean
That's right.
Americans versus the
Right.
Native American
And in fact,
blacks.
that's one of the interesting things about the race out
In
in
the
Brooklyn
11th,
as well,
right.
is that there's always been a real schism between the African American and the Caribbean communities out there, and I think it's clear that, to at least some extent, those two communities came together to help elect Yvette Clarke.
Okay.
That she was able to bridge that gap somewhat.
15 seconds, a little projecting. Do the Democrats sweep, and do we have this era of statewide Democratic dominance?
The Democrats sweep, and that makes the challenge of government tougher.
Right.
Right.
Because there'll be no excuses for not getting their agenda done.
Okay.
Absolutely agreed. I think they're going to sweep. I think there's the one possibility of an upset in the Attorney General's race, but I think it's unlikely. Anytime you've got one-party rule in this state, the best day of those administrations is the first day.
Right. Right. Thank you. Well, we'll end on that on the first day of the general election campaign. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.